All right, ladies and gentlemen, so excited to have with me this evening Mr. Dave Huff. Met him several years ago through trail building, and Jay had an opportunity to work with him. Just a great guy. He has a ton of things going on, from building mountain bike trails and trail systems, and Whuff Rod Company, and then also a nonprofit for kids getting kids on bikes. So we're excited to hear his story and just some of the things that over the years, the wins, the learns, and some of the challenges, it's gone through as a business owner, and really being involved. So Dave, I'm going to let you just kind of take the floor and kind of talk to us a little bit about it, and tell us a little bit about your story, man. I'm so glad to have
Awesome.
you here.
I appreciate it. Yeah, definitely. Appreciate the invite, and yeah, I have a lot of irons in the fire at times. But that's staying busy is good, as long as it's being fruitful, right? So, it's good to have different directions to run. I've kind of set myself up to have innovative dirt solutions as my full time job. So we build mountain bike trails, hiking trails, UTV trails, you name it. Anything with a trail or a bridge or master planning, like we kind of do a little bit of everything, on that front. And then you mentioned the Whuff Rod Company. That's a company that I started in like 2016 and did a launch, um, hard launch on product in 2019 or 2020. Super sweet timing for launching a company 2020. But luckily it's a fly fishing company, and guess what, everyone wanted to get outside and do fishing and stuff, so
That's
we
right.
made it through that. um, that's more like a passion and slash retirement project for me. Like, it's something that we're working on, a bigger company that's going to have camo and hunting packs and all that kind of stuff. So that's something I just slowly working myself into, as I do the trail building full time. And then the nonprofit we started in 2014, Riding Forward, and that was basically just to kind of get kids pumped about getting outside and teach. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many kids that we taught how to ride bikes, when we first got that off the ground, and we're doing a bunch of school classes and things. So that's something that's just kind of always been in the background, and it's there when I have time to, let it bear some more fruit later in life. So,
That's
but
awesome.
yeah, I mean, it's 100% of my time right now is pretty much focused on trail building. I've got two crews running on the East Coast, from Jacksonville, Florida, out to Texas and up to Northern Ohio. So we get around, and obviously, with Jay, that's how we met. So you know how it is. It's kind of a nomadic life, but try to find that work home balance is important, and it's good. Right now business is super busy. The the last few years have been pretty heavy in the trail building. I mean, people that had trails wanted more, and if they didn't have trails, they
I
wanted
wanted to
them.
get
So
it.
the
Yeah.
next 5 years look real busy for trail builders. So
Yeah, I heard an article the other day, or I actually had a CEO. I was watching an interview with them online, and they were talking about it as continuing to be outdoors is where people are. And I think you mentioned, right, 2020, as you thought about the COVID and all the things that were happening, and people started getting back outdoors. And I think you're exactly right. We're seeing that now, that people are continuing to do that, and more cities, organizations are really kind of buying into the, hey, let's get these, you mentioned like hiking trails and ATV trails, not just mountain bike trails. I know
yeah,
those are some things too that people don't realize, that they can have these trail systems built on their own property. And I know that's some of the things that even Jay has had people approach him about it, from a standpoint of, hey, I've got this pond and I want to get down to it, and can you come in and work through that? So I know there's a lot of different things. You talked about doing bridges. Jay was a bridge guy for a while there, and
oh
so
yeah,
building bridges over areas where you can't just go through and do dirt. So
yeah.
so tell us a little, like, what are some of the things that, you guys are doing? Like, you're working with different cities? Where are you seeing a lot of that kind of coming from? Just lots of different things?
I've actually in the last couple years I've been blessed to have a lot of private work. Um, Once again in 2020, people wanted to get outside, and one of the things a lot of folks did was they just started buying up big pieces of land, and they wanted to recreate on their own land. They didn't want to have to deal with cities that didn't have trail systems or subpar trail systems, and they just started investing in their own recreation. So I've worked for some really, really cool people in the last few years. Um, and I continue once or twice a year. I get big contracts from, you know, people that are, they're successful people, and they have plenty of money, but they've been smart about it, and they've been super helpful for me as a business person. Some of the practices that a lot of them are, life coaches and things, or serial entrepreneurs, you name it. It's like it's cool to like get to experience that, and they get to see you in your element, and you see them in their element. So it's kind of cool. And um networking's key, right? So whether you're digging in the dirt and you meet a dude that gives $100,000 speeches and he's your customer, like you can learn from him, and whether it's just a quick takeaway or, I mean, I started following a couple of them on social media just to kind of learn from them. And it's just cool where this job's taken me. It's I think one thing that is important as an entrepreneur, whether you're starting out or you've been in the game for 3 to 5 years, is, I mean, one of the things for me in the beginning, I wanted to be big. I wanted to like hit the ground running, but I always talked through it with my wife, and I was always like, I don't want to just be a flash in the pan. Like I want like a more organic growth. I want to grow slowly, and I want people to want us to work for them. Or even with the Fly Rod Company, the same thing. Organic growth, grassroots style. Like, I don't want to pay a bunch of people to like my stuff. Like, I want people to buy it and go fish it and then tell their buddies and then have their buddies buy it. So
Right.
same with the trails. Like, it's been a slow roll with social media. There's so many companies out there now that have been building trails for like 2 or 3 years, but they have these flashy websites, and they have, all this social media stuff and these crazy videos. And it's like, I've been building trails since 2007 with a machine, so I can just kind of pass over all that. And like I said, I've been blessed with work, and I've built up my reputation from the ground up and taken it slow. And in my opinion, if you take 3 to 5 to 10 years to build, as long as you're building, if you can't be just stagnant for 3 to 5 years. But if you're seeing 30, 40, 50%, 100% growth every year, and you're comfortable with that, and you're not just blowing up overnight, like that's a healthy growth that
That's sustainable.
you're gonna maintain that.
Yeah,
Like
it's sustainable.
the ones that like waste a bunch of money on a big flashy website and start posting stuff on social media, like they're there and gone before you can even think about it. So I I love the fact that at this point in my life, I can pick the jobs I want to do. I can pretty much name my price, and I can say I don't want to do that job, or I want to do that job, like, I think it all goes back to, I'm very transparent. I make my yeses my yeses, my no's, and people see me for that. Like, whether they like it or don't, they know that they're getting the real, honest, gritty truth out of me. So,
Yeah.
and I think that comes off in my building and my style of building and the whole thing. I mean, I think it's a culmination of all that, but it's it's a lesson that you can take to the bank almost,
Yeah.
like slow building is not bad for business. It's just you got to have patience and
That,
persistence.
yeah, that lesson you just taught right there's got, it has so many parts to it. I heard in there, I think about that John Maxwell quote that talks about say no to the good so you can say yes to the great. Because
Yep.
I see people all the time just settling for something. What you talk about, a job, right? It might not be the right job, it might not be the right job for you, or it might not be the right client for you, it might be whatever. And then there's this client up here, and that's your ideal client. And I think sometimes people just get so greedy, and you talked about it, they just, they're not sustaining their business, they're just grabbing whatever they can grab, and it's not sustaining it, it's not putting the work in and growing the business from a steady pace to be able to be sustainable long term. There's just so much gold that just came through that last like couple of minutes of you talking. And I think so many great points within that, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, none of us have, they're not all wins, right? I mean, I tried for years. I live in the Cincinnati area, northern Kentucky, and our trail systems here aren't amazing. There's a lot of miles, but there's not. I say there's not. I'm more of a smiles versus miles guy, so it's just, they're a certain style, and that they do okay, and one of my biggest things was I wanted to land a project here and make it awesome. And I learned a hard lesson, heck, it's been 6 or 7 years ago now, 6 years ago. I i said yes too many times, and I got myself into a project that didn't have the right budget, and the city manager was pushing and pushing and pushing, and I should have said no more, and I didn't. And it ended up making me look bad, and it ended up, I lost money on the project, and the end result wasn't that great. And that was one of those things where I had to take that, I had to lick my wounds and go home and come back to fight another day. And it happens in business, but you got to be able to stand your ground. And if you're feeling any gut feelings in business are that those aren't,
Spot on. You
they're,
got to go with your gut. You
yep.
got to go with your gut. I
I've seen a
100%
lot of
agree.
I've seen a lot of people look at spreadsheets and try to make it make sense, but they just don't feel like it makes sense. And those kind of situations, if you can't make it make sense to yourself, it don't matter how many things you put on a piece of paper. So um it's true. And it sucks when you have a big loss like that too. I lost that project. I lost almost $45,000 on it, and it was one of those things where, my wife and I had a discussion, and we dealt with it. We handled it. Conversations had to be had, and I learned from it. And from that point till now, it's just been trajectory of just
Uh,
up, up, up. And I think it happened for a reason. Um, but like I said, you gotta stick to it, and I stand my ground more now.
yeah. But
And
that
it's
goes
good.
back to it's failing forward, right? It's only a failure, a complete failure, when you don't learn from it. But when
Yep.
you learn from it, then you're going to gain in the end, because you're going to take that lesson and then go. But, I think everybody needs to know, like, you're going to fail. Like, if you're not failing, you're never going to be successful,
Yep.
because you're
That's
not learning what you need to learn in order to get to where you need to get, right? And so I think that's critical in any type of business or anything that you're doing, that, yeah, it is. Sometimes you got to suck it up, and sometimes there is expensive. Most of
yep.
the time when I've made one of those decisions, I went against my gut and I made it, and then I'm like,
Yep.
oh, and it can be really, really, really expensive.
Yeah. Take
Um,
yourself to. I'd
yeah,
say
you, like you
taking
said, you just got to
myself to
lick
school
those
is what it
wounds.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and Jay and I have talked about that along, I mean, we've been together over, 25 years, and we've talked about it. Like sometimes the lessons you learn are better than lessons you would learn if you went to school somewhere. I mean, he's been out on his mini X for what, the last, I guess, 9 months or so. And there's no amount of school he could have gone to get the experience that he's gotten over the last month on the hours and hours and hours and hundreds of hours that he's been on the equipment. Right. So, and you know how it is, like when you're in the seat, it's a whole different ball game from somebody
Yeah,
telling you what's going on. Right. So,
absolutely.
so with the you talked a little bit about the nonprofit. So what how can, if somebody's in your area or if they want to kind of get involved with that, like what does that look like?
Right now, honestly, like it's kind of just we help a local NICA team, high school cycling, and middle school. Ridingforward.org is the website.
Okay.
Um, and it's Northern Kentucky based. We don't have a ton of programs right now, just because I hate to keep bringing it up, but
You got some other stuff going on right now.
school, well, I mean, school programs kind of
Yeah.
went away there for a few years,
Yeah.
so they're just kind of now getting back up into the swing of things. And we did for a long time we did the STEM stuff with kids where we had a class of 16 kids and every one of them got a bike and they got to unbox it, and it was an 11-week course, and every week we would teach them about a part of the bike. They'd put it together piece by piece and then teach them how to work on it. So at the end of 11 weeks they had a bike that they got to keep and take home, and they knew how to work on it. So those are
That's
cool things.
awesome.
I'd love to get back into that more. That kind of ties into once I get a little bit more
Yeah.
retired, I can kind of handle more of that. But in the meantime, it's a 501c3, and fully insured. We do a lot of fundraising for, like I said, the NICA team and other stuff like that. Like if there's a need cycling related in the area, we always try to lend a hand and lend some expertise to just years of learning. So
Right. That's awesome.
yeah,
Well, so if you had to leave like one for our Chimo community, if you had to leave like one word of advice, as a business owner, what would it be? You're involved in a lot of different things. But what would it be? What would you think, like one thing that would be kind of a takeaway you would hope somebody would kind of take away?
I probably what I tell my guys and my crew guys, I tell them don't be afraid to make aggressive mistakes. Like it's okay to land on something and lose, then circle around it and not make a decision. And I think a lot of people get in the excuse me, a lot of people get into that zone where they're iffy whether they want to excuse me, whether they want to yes or no. They just start waffling, and it's okay to make an aggressive mistake. So
Yeah, I think you're right. Sometimes people are hesitant to make a decision, and then it ultimately hurts you more than if you just went ahead and made the wrong decision. It's okay, right? Because if you don't make any decision, then you don't get to where you need to be. So that is definitely spot on. Well, so Dave, what website do we need to check you out at? If they've got questions maybe about possibly getting some work done on a trail system, or got questions about the ride company.
yeah, innovativedirtsolutions.com or whuffrodco.com. So
Awesome. Well, hey, I greatly appreciate you joining us this evening. Sorry you got choked up right there at
it's
the
all right.
end. We definitely appreciate you being here with us, and we'll have your contact information below. If anybody has any questions, they can definitely reach out to you. But so good to have you here.